a glass of water, and she was drinking it on down. And as she was drinking it, there was this green goo slipping into the water. It was bizarre. Because,
I looked at that. And I think it's just an artifact of the refraction of the water. It's not moving in a believable fashion when you consider the density of the water. I think it's an optical illusion. So I would just throw that one out.
I never saw anything like that. But anyhow, when you have a dry cough like that, I've been a nurse in ICU and education for a long time. I'm in my 60s, and you have to cough. You get a congested cough. You get a lot of, you hear it. And I didn't see it at first, but then I saw it, and it kind of slides down into there. It's hard for me to say that that's an optical illusion.
Yeah, it doesn't look right to me. It just doesn't look right to me. I think it was just something refracting through from the back here, because for one thing, it's moving way too fast. Okay. So I'm not paying attention to that. But the issue is, if Hillary's on medication that is seriously drying her out, that would account for the cough and the constant needing to drink water.
I know.
Apparently, in the press conference on the airplane, she had a glass of water, and apparently was done with that and still grabbed another bottle of water to drink. So,
Well, I know
okay.
Medication can really dry you out.
They can mess you. Plus, she's on that aircraft at 35,000 feet, and that's going to dehydrate you.
But when she had that, I never called in at that time. I know now because you said your girlfriend, one old girlfriend, used to have seizures. And I'm thinking there's other types of seizures.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, I know you mentioned them later. And
well, my former girlfriend had petit mal seizures, where she just simply freeze.
Yeah, but you can do it where, you're not passing out completely. You could blank out without falling down.
Yeah, that's what my former girlfriend had.
And another thing is that it could be Tourette's syndrome, where you have these spasms and uncontrollable. And
no, it's not Tourette's, or there would be some embarrassments in the language if it was Tourette's syndrome. Anyway, listen, Mary, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And unlike Hillary Clinton, I'm willing to tell you, yes, I'm coughing a lot because I have a nasty summer cold, and dealing with that. But I'm a little better today than I was yesterday, so I figure by this time next week I'll be over it. But then I'm not running for president anyway. I should have. I mean, when you look at the candidates the Democrats put forward and the Libertarians, I mean, Gary Johnson just flatlined his campaign. I mean, not that a third-party candidate has a chance anyway. But he's got a nice interview on the corporate media, and the interviewer asks him, what's your opinion on Aleppo? And Gary Johnson goes, what's Aleppo? And the interviewer, just the look on his face, you're kidding me, right? So, I wonder if it's too late to restart my Rivero 2016 campaign, at least for the write-in vote, running under the slogan, he could hardly do any worse. And looking at Gary Johnson, I'm much more presidential than he is. All righty, getting on back to the real candidates. Trump's numbers in Indiana are starting to show significant shifts. The Franklin Pierce University Boston Herald poll out today. 36% of Hispanic voters in Indiana are going to vote for Donald Trump. 19% of black voters are going to back Donald Trump. The black and Hispanics, along with the women and the LGBT, were considered Hillary Clinton's core constituency, the foundation on which she was going to build her campaign, and they're starting to desert her. The leaders of Black Lives Matter just came right on out and said, she's saying all the things that we want to hear. We have no way of knowing she'll ever keep her word on any of it. That's where that trustworthiness issue comes back. She's completely untrustworthy. Every day we find out she lied again. And the corporate media acts like it's a big surprise. Oh, my goodness, they caught Hillary Clinton lying. Go back over the last 22 years and find something that Hillary Clinton didn't lie about. That would be newsworthy. Down in Florida, Trump is at 55, Hillary at 45, 10-point spread. They're out there cherry-picking the people they're talking to try and generate numbers favorable to Hillary. They're coming up short. Florida poll also showed 1 in every 6 Democrats will vote for Donald Trump. The Trumpocrats. Bill Clinton is still out there saying that Donald Trump's slogan, Make America Great Again, it's racist. It's racist to say about making America great again. When I was a kid, we were taught to take pride in America being great. And it doesn't really matter anyway. Bill Clinton's once again proving what a hypocrite he is because he himself used that slogan in 1991, 1992, and in 2008 when he was supporting Hillary's first run for the White House. We've seen the attack on the Confederate flag. Oh, it's racist, it's evil. And yet if you go back, and by the way, I have a huge political pin collection. I'm probably going to ship it all to the Smithsonian. It goes back to Teddy Roosevelt. And presidents throughout history have had pins for campaigning in the South with the flag of the Confederacy on them. So does Hillary. So did Al Gore. They make this stuff up out of thin air to create a controversy where none existed, and then they campaign on the controversy. The color pink offends the LGBTQRVUM community. And if you elect me president, I will ban pink. That's how they do it. They make up a controversy. And they do it for a simple reason. They don't want to talk about the things that are really affecting your life, the economy, the wars, out of control corruption, because they have nothing they can talk about that makes them look good. So we're going to talk about gay rights and abortion and all the rest of this stuff. Every 4 years, it's the same ritual that we see. I love this story. Over in Cormorant, Minnesota, a dog, a Great Pyrenee named Duke, has been elected mayor of the town for his 3rd term. Apparently, he won his first election as a joke, and the townspeople like him so much they've re-elected him twice. Good. The cats are claiming the election was rigged, however. We'll be right back after this commercial. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And no, do not call the toll-free number. It is not working. How wonderful it is to live in a fascist economic dictatorship with third world quality services available to us at high cost. So use the 516 numbers. Now, there's a doctor who has started making videos, and we've had them on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, where his diagnosis of Hillary Clinton is that she has Parkinson's disease. And I'm not reporting this so that you should feel sorry for her, although maybe a little. It's a nasty, nasty, nasty disease. And I'm getting all these emails sent to me by people who appear to be in the know, talking about, yes, the medications given for Parkinson's disease can dehydrate the people, and hydration has to be maintained properly or more serious things can happen. Here is the real concern. If Hillary's cough was from chronic bronchitis or because she smoked, who cares? As I said before, the fact that Franklin Roosevelt was in a wheelchair for polio did not impact his ability to make decisions. John F. Kennedy's back injury and his other medical illnesses did not affect his ability to make decisions. I do think it was dishonest for the government to hide Reagan's Alzheimer's during his second term and let George Herbert Walker Bush run things from the background. But in this case, we're talking about before the general election, and there's a legitimate concern over Hillary's behavior. And this doctor has looked at her video clips and her very strange behaviors, and he compares them to the behaviors of known Parkinson's patients, like Michael Keaton. And there are parallels. Parkinson's disease leads to dementia, the inability to make good decisions. It can eventually lead to Alzheimer's outright. The medications used to treat Parkinson's are even more dangerous. They can cause confusion, dizziness, faintness, lightheadedness, falling asleep in the middle of the day, mood or mental changes. And here's the one that is really dangerous for somebody holding the keys to the nuclear weapons: seeing, hearing, or feeling things that are not really there. So this is a legitimate area. And when we look at the behavior of the Hillary Clinton campaign and how the corporate media is destroying the career of anybody who even asks a question, it's obvious something is being hidden. Now, we've already talked about Gary Johnson's gaffe with Aleppo. Now he's trying to use the Hillary defense. He just had a blank moment to hit a brain short circuit. I think that at this case, he's kind of toast. But Paul Joseph Watson, even before Aleppo happened, Paul Joseph Watson really went after Gary Johnson and said he's a total fraud and he's a complete idiot. And he was saying that the media has focused so much on Trump's idiosyncrasies. Johnson got a free pass mostly because the corporate media just is opposed to covering any third-party candidates at all unless they absolutely have to. Now, they're going to have to give Jill Stein a little bit of coverage because she just had an arrest warrant issued for her. Now, before you jump up and say, oh, it's a political hack job, no, it isn't. Jill Stein is up there with the protest for over the Dakota pipeline. And apparently she spray-painted one of the construction company's trucks, which is technically an act of vandalism, and they've issued an arrest warrant for her. And I think that's one of the kinds of arrests that people can feel proud about, when they know that they may be breaking a minor law, but they're standing on the moral right side. And a lot of people are going up to this Dakota protest. They're bringing attention to it, and they should. It's another classic case of a corporation just rolling over people, destroying their cultural heritage, all in the name of a fast buck. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has confirmed this company doesn't have the required paperwork to be doing what they're doing. The company filed an application for an easement to allow the pipeline to go through, but the easement is still under consideration, and they're just plowing on ahead. Leonardo DiCaprio is up there, bringing as much media attention as he can. Margot Kidder, who you'll remember as Lois Lane from the Superman movies, she's quite an activist in her own right right now, and we're going to have her on the show very, very soon. She's heading up there right now. And unfortunately, they've also called in the National Guard. So things are getting really, really tense. But at some point, we have to get away from this idea that what corporations want is the top priority of the government, and what ordinary people want, it just isn't a factor anymore. The only way we're going to have a government that serves the people is for the people to be the government. This country was kind of set up on that idea. Now, the Founding Fathers couldn't do a direct participatory democracy because the technology to do it didn't exist. They accepted the need for legislative bodies as a necessary evil, knowing it opened the door to corrupting influences, because there wasn't a way to go on out and involve the general population in these decisions that change their lives. Today, it's different. We can have a direct participatory democracy. And I think in the future, when we talk about the blueprint for the new America, government should be limited to the role of basically being the nation's janitor. Take the trash out, keep the roads repaired, keep the bridges solid, keep the infrastructure working. Large decisions that affect the nation, such as bailouts for Wall Street or going to war, can and should be put to a direct vote of the population as a whole. And we will not see anywhere near as many wars, and we will not see our wealth plundered to cover up the crimes of the Wall Street bankers. I think it's an idea whose time has come. So good for Jill. That's the kind of an arrest warrant you can point to with pride, have it framed on the wall. Now, getting onto the war zones, and I realize I'm way behind on the talking points here, ISIS has now withdrawn from their headquarters in Aleppo's Al-Bab city. Gary Johnson, you're paying attention? You want to know what Aleppo is? We're talking about it right now here. They basically evacuated their headquarters. They left behind the Al-Hisba police department, the jihadi training camps, and weapons storage centers. And I'll bet you they're going to find all kinds of U.S.-provided weapons when they open those things up here. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, you had the wrong Michael. You said Michael Keaton with Parkinson's. You probably meant Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox. That was it, yes.
That's all right. Hey, you know, my medical background, 23 years in ICU, I looked at her and I watched these videos, and the coughing spells, I'm kind of wondering, in her activity intolerance and her inability to kind of do anything exertional, I'm wondering if she's got pulmonary hypertension. You know, if she's taken any of that stuff in the past, years and years ago, when that whole thing Fastin and Pondem was on the market for weight control and losing weight and stuff like that. You know, a lot of people can end up coming down with what they call pulmonary hypertension, which is right-sided heart failure, and that's actually a backup in the pulmonary. And so, you know, she's getting fluid in her lungs, and it tickles and it makes her want to cough. I wonder if she has pulmonary hypertension. Maybe some pulmonary edema going on.
That's not something that would impair her ability to make decisions.
No, that would not.
Okay, well, then I'm not that concerned about it. But looking at the side effects of the medications that are given for Parkinson's, causing unsteadiness, and then we see where she's being helped up the stairs. There was that one picture of her addressing a crowd outside, and she's literally got people on either side of her holding her up, holding her steady. Yeah, there's definitely
she's clearly got some equilibrium problems.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there's something neurologically wrong, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
That's it. Just want to correct you on the Michael. Michael.
Yeah, you know, when I said it, I was struggling and trying to say, I know it's a Michael, but no, it was Michael J. Fox. And,
right.
You know, when he first came out and said he had Parkinson's, I was kind of wondering if, you know, he'd been the champion of diet soft drinks. And we know that aspartame can actually trigger symptoms that seem Parkinsonian. And that maybe if he just quit the aspartame that he might get better, but sadly that did not happen. Yep. Okay, Steve, thank you very much for the update and the correction. We're going to let you go here. Now, Ash Carter is still running around trying to make all this, Russia bad, Russia's doing this, Russia's doing that, and he's now revised his language to something that is actually a little bit more accurate. He was out there saying that, Russia's sowing the seeds of global instability. And now he basically came on out and said that Russia is eroding the international order. That's actually closer to the truth, because Russia is standing in the way of the U.S.-dominated global economic order centered on that dollar. Russia's not going along. So Carter's actually given this away, what this is really all about. Russia won't get out of the way and let the U.S. regime change countries, impose the petrodollar deal, impose the dollar and the rest of it. That's really what this is all about. Article coming out of Global Research up in Canada. China challenging U.S. dollar hegemony, seeks new global financial order. That's what these wars are really all about. They're risking the incineration of the surface of planet Earth and the death, literally, of billions of human beings in this argument over whose brand of ink and paper we're all supposed to use for the next century. We're going to take a phone call from James in Tokyo. Ohio gozaimasu. What's on your mind today?
Michael, I'm a last-time caller, and I'm sick and tired of you insulting Japan. A lot of times when you say if it came down to Hillary and Godzilla, you'd go for the lizard. And I don't think that it's proper for you to compare our national mascot to that monster.
Well, I'm obviously favoring your national mascot over Hillary Clinton. I think you should take some pride in that. Start a campaign, Godzilla for president.
I mean, our monster Our monster doesn't suicide people in the park, threaten Russia with war. Our monster doesn't spew up green stuff. Our monster breathes fire. And if this continues, Michael, I'm going to file a civil suit against you, against defamation against Godzilla. I've already had my 2 kids, my ex-wife, and Ryan Dawson, would you believe? And this just can't continue anymore. Because what you don't realize is that lizard lives matter.
Well, I'll tell you what. If, tell Godzilla to come on over here and knock on my door, and I will offer a personal and deep apology.
Thank you, Michael. That's all I had to say today.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Bye-bye. We're going to let you go there. All right. I have to find another monster to say. I would rather vote for the Yeti than Hillary Clinton. And now I'm going to have everybody in Nepal on my case, I guess. China is keeping their control over the South China Sea with patrols from Sancha outpost driving off hundreds of foreign ships. Now, most of these ships are fishing boats that have been told by their respective governments, go on in and fish in what China claims are their territorial waters. The islands themselves really aren't worth all that much. There isn't that much there. What's at stake here is the fishing grounds. Because, frankly, after Fukushima and the Gulf oil disaster and the GMO disaster, there is not enough safe, healthy food for the human population. And so everybody is starting to line up and say, well, we're claiming this source of healthy food, and we're not going to let you come on in and take it. And that's a big part of what's going on there, along, of course, with the U.S. agenda to destroy the yuan as a threat to the U.S. dollar. Obama is out there warning China must give up its claim to the whole of the South China Sea. In other words, Obama just admitted China does have a claim. Whether it's the Cairo Convention or documents that go back way earlier than that, that's why it's called the South China Sea. And Obama is simply telling China, okay, it may have been yours up to now, but you have to let it go. We're going to take your fishing grounds away from you and give them to our friends in Japan and the Philippines. So, a lot of chest thumping going on in his last few months in office here. All right, let's talk a little bit about 9/11, and I have to do kudos to Richard Gage and architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, because they just put up a billboard in New York City right across from the offices of the New York Times. It's a 3-story tall placard, and it shows one of the collapses of the World Trade Towers, and it says right out, ask the 118 Fire Department of New York members who spoke of explosions. In the oral histories, the New York Times sued the city of New York to obtain. And then they include a quote by the New York Fire Department fire marshal. Everybody, I think, thought these things were blown up. Now, as we reported earlier in the week, the European Physics Society, in their journal, came out with a study saying that the evidence is overwhelming. The 3 buildings that collapsed in New York on 9/11 were brought down as the result of controlled demolition. And again, going back to the Naudet brothers documentary, 9/11, which, by the way, they didn't set out to make a documentary about 9/11. If you haven't seen it, this is a really wonderful video. And the Naudet brothers were actually doing a documentary about the process by which somebody becomes a firefighter. And they had gone to the Fire Department Academy, and they had picked this one student who was about to go into his what's called the probation period. And the firefighter was on probation at the fire station just blocks from the World Trade Towers. And they were just making this thing about, living in the fire station and cooking and getting along with everybody. And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened literally right in front of them. And they made this documentary. And in this documentary, you can hear the firefighters say, this looks like a controlled demolition. Boom, 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 boom. Experts in controlled demolition who look at the video of World Trade Center Building Number 7 always say it's a controlled demolition. In the unedited raw video, you can hear the explosions. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And a couple more things about 9/11. As you know, Sunday is the 15th anniversary, and we're going to be spending a lot more time on that topic because at this point, the overwhelming majority of Americans know that the government has lied about 9/11, that something else was going on all the time. And the whole thing was a setup. And one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that it was all planned and scripted ahead of time was provided by the BBC, which reported on the collapse of World Trade Center Building Number 7 more than 20 minutes before it actually happened. And they had a reporter up in a building in New York looking out over the World Trade Center, reporting on the collapse of World Trade Center Building Number 7, and it's still standing behind her. Fox News made the same report, so did CNN. But the BBC video makes it really obvious this happened. They reported on the collapse of Building Number 7 more than 20 minutes before it actually happened. Now remember, at that point, no steel frame building had ever collapsed from fire, and none have since. So they couldn't guess it was going to come down, and they reported it as having already collapsed. Now, the BBC has never officially had an explanation for that. They just do one of these things and say, have you seen our latest episode of Top Gear? To which I would reply, no, it's not the show that it used to be. Now, researchers went to BBC and said, we'd like to see the original, unedited videos from that reporter in New York reporting on the collapse of Building Number 7 with it standing behind her. And the BBC said, well, we just threw all that stuff away. Now, anybody who's ever worked in TV news understands you never, ever throw away the original raw footage of an historic event because that's basically a giant piggy bank. You will make money off of that video, licensing it over and over and over again for documentaries and who knows what all else. Those raw tapes are golden, and all corporate media networks have these huge tape archives of this material. They never let it go. So the only reason for the BBC to throw it away was to get rid of the evidence trail that whoever was supposed to punch that button on Building Number 7 missed the cue and didn't bring it down until after it had been reported that it came on down. All right, let's grab a quick phone call. Clint in Nevada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm going to make this one quick. I know you're coming on to break. Okay, it's on the front drudge right now. 71% of doctors say Hillary's health concerns are serious and could be disqualifying. And this is from a informal survey taken. 70% of the doctors polled at the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, and it's done today.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now here, and I'm going to post a link to the original article from PR Newswire. So thank you very much for the heads up. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with hour number 3 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, and once again, the toll-free number is not available. And the number to reach the show is 512-716-1603, 512-716-1883, and 512-716-1897. And the nasty people are apparently back. And let me take a quick look at this because they are really pounding on my server. And all they're really accomplishing is telegraphing how afraid they are of the truth getting out. So, let's just do that right now. And, okay. I have to do a couple of things here to get everything running. Okay, and there we are. Alrighty, so everything is back to battery, hunky-dory. We were talking about 9/11. We're talking about how the BBC literally reported, and Fox and CNN, but BBC got caught red-handed because the video is out there. And I'm going to be reposting that to the main page of my website here very, very soon. Now, following on with the phone call that Godzilla's representatives are going to sue me in court for apparently they perceive my preferring to vote for Godzilla over Hillary Clinton as some form of libelous statement. There's a New York Muslim group has called on New York City to remove the phrase Islamic terrorists from the 9/11 memorial. And I think there is some justification for this, because we know Muslims were being framed for all that was going on back then. Not just 9/11 itself, but the anthrax scare turned out to be a frame-up job. Remember, the head of the FBI admitted that the named suspects in 9/11 were based entirely on these magic flame and explosion-proof passports that were found littered all over the place, or conveniently left in luggage that was never put onto the airplane in the first place. And he was forced to admit, no, the FBI did not in fact know who, if anyone, was on those planes, or even if they were remotely controlled. Now, you remember that ridiculous lawsuit against Iran that was a desperate attempt to hang on to Iran's money in this country? And they basically came on out and said, well, we just know that Iran is behind terror, so victims of terrorist attacks can sue Iran and seize the money without needing to prove that Iran had anything to do with that. Well, apparently this week in the U.S. House of Representatives, there is a bill that will allow victims of 9/11 to sue Saudi Arabia. Now, this is apparently part of that campaign to redirect attention for 9/11 away from the U.S. government and away from Israel to yet another potential target for invasion. First it was Afghanistan, went in, bombed and ruined the place. Oh, we're sorry, it was actually Iraq was behind 9/11. Go in and bomb and ruin the place. Oh, we're sorry about that. Now it's Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia did not have a motive to do 9/11. They make a huge amount of money off the petrodollar deal. They have billions in investments in the United States. They don't want to give the U.S. government an excuse to seize that money. Looks like the government's going to go ahead and seize it anyway without an excuse. And if Saudi Arabia wanted to hurt the United States of America, all they need to do is ask for all their money back. And the destruction to our economy would make 9/11 itself look like a speed bump. Saudi Arabia doesn't need to crash airplanes into skyscrapers. Now, the Saudis who were claimed to be part of the hijackers, again, the head of the FBI admitted that they didn't really know who was on the airplanes, because they were relying on these magic bomb and explosion and fireproof passports. They didn't really know. The head of the FBI admitted the IDs they were using to name these people were fakes, high-quality fakes from a nation state that has these kind of capabilities. So this bill is completely absurd. It's just a cash grab. We're going to grab money from Saudi Arabia. Oh, we're sorry, Saudi Arabia didn't do 9/11. It was Liechtenstein. We're going to sue Liechtenstein now and invade them for 9/11. Oh, we're wrong about that, too. Australia did 9/11. We've got to go make war on Australia. On and on and on. We ran a poll at whatreallyhappened.com. Do you believe the government's story about 9/11? And the results came in. No got 99%. Yes got 1%. They didn't actually get 1%. The polling software rounds off to the nearest integer. Basically, no, I don't believe the government story got 727 votes. Yes got 5 votes. All right, we're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about 9/11, which the anniversary is coming up on this Sunday. And we're basically looking at all the evidence that it was a false flag attack. It was as phony as the Lusitania not having weapons, or Pearl Harbor being a surprise, or torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, or a Spanish mine in Havana Harbor. This is how the U.S. government launches war. They fake some kind of an incident. And the U.S. is not alone with that. Hitler did the same thing at Gleiwitz to launch the war against Poland. Up at the top of whatreallyhappened.com in the permanent menu, we have a link to an article about 42 false flag attacks that are officially admitted to, where the governments who did this have actually said, yeah, we actually did do that. Weren't we clever? We just snookered everybody out there. And that's just the 42 that are admitted to. How many hundreds of other incidents are not what history books and the media tell you they are in order to seek some political or military gain? Paul Craig Roberts is out with an article saying the tide is turning. The official story of 9/11 is now the conspiracy theory. The majority of Americans don't believe the official story. We showed that with our poll. We all know the government lied. We don't need to get tangled up in minute details, and we need to avoid getting suckered into discussions about obvious poison the well planted stories to try and keep the confusion going, to delay the formation of a public consensus. Whether it's directed energy weapons or UFOs or micro nukes or no plane at the Pentagon. And no, I will not be taking any phone calls on that topic. All of these are there to try and keep the confusion and chaos going. But it's too late. The American people have formed a consensus. The U.S. government lied to us about 9/11. The fine details do not matter. Now we need to know what we need to decide. What are we going to do about it? Do you want your children to grow up under a government that lies to them to get their money and their obedience and lies to them to send them off to wars? What responsible parent would be comfortable with that idea? That's what I want to know. Now, we've been poking fun at the Nobel Peace Prize, and what a joke it has become. Alfred Nobel originally set this up to actually honor and award people who promoted peace. And over the years, it's become a political prize. The world leaders want it as an office decoration. And Henry Kissinger got one. And we know what a warmonger he was. Barack Obama got one before he'd even done anything, and he's become one of the most warmongering presidents we've ever had. Al Gore shared one over his human-caused global warming hoax. And now, the White Helmets, the notorious mop-up wing of Nusra, has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. They've made this whole thing a joke. They've made it completely irrelevant and meaningless. I can't imagine anybody with an ounce of integrity ever accepting one. It's just a joke, and it's part of a larger process. This awarding of shiny things to wear on your vest or hang on the wall is part of the brainwashing to get you to pay attention to those who are telling you what the government wants you to believe. You need to listen to this person. Look, he's got plaques, and he's got honors and awards, and he's got all this stuff. He's all over the wall. You should listen to that person because he's just been given all of these wall decorations here. And don't listen to those other people over there, no matter how much sense they're making, because they don't have the plaques. They don't have statues. So you don't want to pay attention to them. That's part of it. It's part of the fraud, the deception, to make the people who are the deceivers look socially superior. And then we find out, of course, that they really aren't. Now, getting into the economic news here a little bit, there was this video, and it was produced by a European travel concern, and it was sort of tongue-in-cheek. But the idea of the video is if you're thinking about relocating to the United States, be very careful where you're going to go. And then it proceeds to lay out 12 of the worst places to live in the United States. And it is a very telling video. You need to watch that. And you need to watch it, especially if you gave any credence whatsoever to Obama's claims of a booming economy and the fixed highest ever stock market. See, they're using that stock market as a banner. They run it up through rigging and then they wave it and say, see, the economy is doing great. The only thing booming in our economy are the war industries, and they're actually not doing very well either, because for all the money that goes into them, they're producing junk. They're having to do a re-engineering, rethink on the Gerald R. Ford. All of the littoral combat ships have been recalled to port and dry dock because of all their problems. The F-35 is not going to be fully operational until at least 2019. That's when they're expecting the software for the cannon to finally be delivered. Yet by imperial edict, it's been declared ready for service, and they're going to fly it on out there and see what breaks so that they know what to fix, which is going to be kind of rough on those pilots who don't come home. But the Pentagon is now starting to work like Microsoft. We're going to put it out. We know it's junk. We'll let the end users find out what's wrong with it, and then maybe we'll get around to fixing it. The Internal Revenue Service is now warning people to stay away from IRA funds that involve gold stored in your home. Now, they don't really have anything that they can say is illegal about it. They're just opposed to the idea of you having gold in your home, because they need that gold to save the New York Fed, and they want it piled up in one place where they can grab it, not have to go door to door to door, especially with the population that is ready to defend their gold with their firearms. Now, we had a call into the show in the first hour that raised a very interesting point. Right now, these Hanjin ships, Hanjin Shipping went into bankruptcy. Their ships are basically being held in port to find out who's really the owner of them now. Legal claims are being made against them. And on board those ships right now is $14 billion of cargo that was frozen in transit. For any of that cargo that represents foodstuffs, it's probably going to spoil and be utterly worthless. But there could be other things on there as well. And that means all these retailers who ordered goods aren't going to get them to put on the shelves. There's going to be a cascade of fallout from this Hanjin bankruptcy. The supply chain is going to be heavily damaged. Products are not going to be delivered. The delivery trucks aren't going to be making any money. There's going to be nothing on the shelves for people to buy. Retailers are going to go out of business. This is an absolute mess, and it illustrates just how fragile our global economy has become under the ministrations of all these globalists. Now, Congress is starting to press the FBI for files going back to 2008 and the financial crisis. I think seeing James Comey get up there and essentially admit Hillary Clinton committed felony violations of Title 18, but we're not going to file any charges anyway, got people thinking about back in 2008, where we knew there was massive fraud going on with the mortgage-backed securities. We know there's been massive fraud in the global financial systems with the rigging of LIBOR, the rigging of gold, and silver prices, all kinds of fraud out there. In fact, there's an article that came out of Global Research saying that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has set up an online database of complaints against Wall Street and reveals it's just this gigantic house of horrors. How these people are just robbing their investors blind. And so this U.S. Congressman from New Jersey has demanded the FBI turn over all records related to the 2008 financial crisis to find out why no senior executives in the Wall Street firms were ever charged. Now, there's a little wrinkle in corporate law that you need to understand, and it is very simple. Yes, if you're a corporate officer in a corporation, you and your personal wealth are insulated from legal actions against the corporation. But that protection is voided if you committed an illegal act. At that point, your personal wealth becomes fair game. You can go to jail, and you should. And so Congress has decided it's overdue for a look. Now, banks that were out there screaming that Brexit winning the referendum was going to trigger a recession are now having to pull back from that. Britain's banks are doing very well. The Remain banks are now back to backing and supporting Brexit, saying it's not going to be a financial disaster. Let's just move forward with it. Germany is out there warning Great Britain not to make any trade agreements until the Brexit actually happens, which it's not Germany's place to say, and it makes sense only if Germany is absolutely convinced that Brexit will be prevented from happening. And we know that there is a huge push to void the first referendum and have a second one, so they have a second chance at stealing the election. And a great deal of pressure on Parliament to simply say, well, the referendum was advisory only and does not carry the force of law. Once you're a slave of the European Central Bank, you will stay a slave of the European Central Bank. In fact, that could be the global model of all private central banks everywhere. Once you're our slave, you're our slave forever. There is no escape. Nobody ever leaves the private central banks. Now, the good news for the people of Europe, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is dead. The negotiations have gone nowhere, and Germany and France have said it is time to end the negotiations. Nothing is going to happen. Now, over in Laos, Obama is still flapping his gums and not thinking about what he's saying, and he came out with this very bizarre statement that Americans are lazy. And he said Americans are lazy about learning about other countries. They don't feel they need to learn about Canada or Mexico, which is ridiculous. I've been to both Canada and Mexico. I've been around the world. But this was pushing that whole integration. Drop the national borders and learn about every other country and multiculturalism and everything. And, of course, Obama's out there saying Americans' laziness explains their reluctance to embrace his policy of human-caused global warming. No, it's not laziness. It's several record-setting winters in a row that did that. And he accused Americans of being isolated and ignorant because the United States is such a big country. What a ridiculous thing to say in the age of the Internet. That is just absurd beyond belief. And I guess he didn't think it was going to get back here because of the corporate media. But once it was in the foreign press, got back here through the independent media. And people are angry. And they ought to be. And it displays the contempt professional politicians have for you. We'll be right back. And hello, hi America. Welcome back to the show here. And just to show you how ridiculous the PC movement is getting, CNN, this is not a joke, it's not a satire, it's not a parody. CNN came on out with a story that math is racist. And this came out of a book called Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, in which she comes on out and says the very nature of mathematical analysis is increasing racism, whether it's targeted advertising, insurance, education, policing. O'Neill is saying that algorithms and big data intentionally target the poor and reinforce racism and amplify inequality. Well, I think it's time to make a point here. Equality sounds nice in political speeches, and it looks really good in the Declaration of Independence. The reality is that we are all different individuals. We're the product of our inherited qualities from our forebears and our life experiences. We're like snowflakes. No two of us are alike. And the reality is we are all different. None of us are equal. The intention in the Declaration of Independence, when they said all men are created equal, was the idea of getting rid of the idea of nobility that all people started out at the same level and had the freedom to go as far as their temperament would let them go. Some people want to work and build, and other people just want to hang out and have fun. And that's fine. That's what freedom is supposed to be. But during the 60s and 70s, that original idea that all men and women are created equal was an attack on the idea of nobility and inherited position and inherited wealth, was scrubbed in favor of an absolutist approach that we're all supposed to be equal, no matter what. And when they started out with things like programs for equal opportunity, that was a good idea. The early feminists believed in equal access to credit and education. That was a good idea. But there was no way to show that this was having any kind of an effect at all, because we, as individuals, are different. Some of us simply work harder than others. Some of us are simply smarter than others. That's just the reality. And so equality was achieved not by having equal opportunities, but by mandating equality of outcome. And they started this horrible program. They couldn't bring the bottom up to match the top, so they started dragging the top down to match the bottom. I actually went through this. My first experience at teaching was in a California high school in the remedial math class. And during lunch breaks, the bright students would hang out in my classroom because we had some mechanical calculators and some other stuff they would play with. And we just started this little informal workshop on how to use a slide rule, which tells you how long ago I was doing this. And I got into serious trouble with the school administration because apparently the fact that we were having this workshop for slide rules got out, and parents were calling and saying, why isn't my kid in this little workshop? And, of course, my response was, if he wants to show up, he can be there. He didn't want to show up. And I was forced to shut this all down, and I was told that the guiding principle of the school system was everybody gets a guaranteed minimum education. Nobody's allowed to have anything above that. It's mandating equality of outcome. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to ride in an airplane whose pilot got the guaranteed minimum education in public school. I certainly don't want to be treated by a doctor who got the guaranteed minimum education in public school. I want the very best. I want the achievers. There's an author out there who's writing a new book on the restoration of meritocracy as a guiding principle of this country, and I think it's a darn good idea. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and let's see. Don't have any phone calls right now. So, now, as you know, earlier in the week, there was a gentleman named Seals, who'd been one of the activists in Ferguson, leading the protests about the police killing of Michael Brown. And he was found in his car, shot in the head, and the car was set on fire. This was the second Ferguson activist to be killed in the exact same manner. DeAndre Joshua was killed on the night in 2014 that Seals was with Michael Brown's family. He, too, was found shot in the head, and his body burned in the car. And, of course, the police promised they would investigate. It claimed there were no leads, no suspects. We're going to see exactly the same thing here. A lot of wet work going on. Now then, over in North Carolina, in Lowell, police officer James Paul Blair, 51, is in jail on a charge of statutory rape. And apparently he had been mentoring a 14-year-old girl to prove policemen are good. And the girl's mother said initially she was reluctant to allow this officer to become friendly with the daughter, but allowed it because, after all, if you can't trust the police, who can you trust? And apparently the daughter had indicated an interest in maybe becoming a police officer as well, so being mentored by one seemed like a good idea. And he seduced her, and they had sex apparently more than once, and she's now pregnant with his child. So I guess the mother isn't going to trust the police much anymore. Over in Atlanta, guy just minding his own business in his own home gets the full-on SWAT treatment. All of a sudden, with no warning, cops kick down his door, rough him up, wreck his place, because he's got marijuana growing in his backyard. Horror of horrors. Except it wasn't marijuana, it was okra. And apparently the police can't tell the difference between okra and marijuana. And they didn't bother to find out if they were accurate. They just went on the full SWAT treatment. And sometimes I worry when I'm making nano silver, which we homebrew our own, and it involves chemistry ware, obviously. I'm worried about what happens if somebody looking through the back window in our place sees, oh, he's got chemistry ware, he must be making drugs. Would I get a chance to explain to the police, no, this is an antibacterial that I'm making, and we make our own because it's cheaper that way, and it's not illegal to be doing what I'm doing? Will I get a chance to explain that, or will we get the flashbang grenades through the window first? Now, Hillary Clinton is still out there with her war on guns and the Second Amendment. One of the comments she made at this Commander-in-Chief Forum, the debate-omania, not really a debate, but an incredible simulation. Gun control is part of her fight against terrorism. She thinks that, or she's claiming, that she will end terror attacks in this country by terrorists by disarming the law-abiding American citizens. And it's ridiculous. Now, over at Cracked Magazine, and I know it's a humor magazine, and they do a lot of goofy stuff, but they seem to have a strong sense of social activism. And they had an article, 5 Reasons Gun Control in the United States is a Lost Cause. And they basically go on down saying that everything the government is doing in the naming of curbing gun violence does not affect the violence. It merely disarms the American citizen. And that, I think, is their real agenda. And they go on, they mention how the U.S. government obsesses about the AR-15 when it's not a gun that is used very often at all for crime. The people who are talking about the huge number of gun deaths in this country never mention that most of those are suicides. And if guns aren't available, they'll jump out of a tall building. Hopefully hit a banker on the way to the ground. This belief that background checks will fix everything, when criminals will simply steal guns from people who have passed the background check. Everyone's always talking about mass gun grab, door-to-door gun grabs. They're not thinking about the logistics that would be involved. And, of course, there's that little pesky thing called the Bill of Rights. However, not to be discouraged by reality, out in California, on the November ballot, there is a ballot initiative calling for house-to-house confiscation of all guns. So I'm sure the vote riggers have already been assigned that one. Remember how they were able to cheat Prop 37, the one for GMO labeling? There were all these allegations about votes that had vanished, yes votes were disappearing, and all that other stuff. Our elections are a joke. And I've got a few emails from people who've been listening to my description of a way to have a trustworthy election. And they're saying it does make sense. It does work out. It doesn't really fully address the fraud in registration or mail-in ballots, but in terms of validating an actual election where people go to a polling place and vote, it's pretty much bulletproof. And I got to make up a graphic about that and get it out there. Because, yeah, there's no way to cheat it. There's no way to cheat it. Now then, over at Breitbart, they're talking about a new book, The War on Guns, Arming Yourself Against Gun Control Lies by John Lott Jr., and includes an interesting statistic. This is getting on back to the U.S. government's obsession with the AR-15 and the mass public shootings as an excuse to disarm the public. According to all available records, between 1950 and 2010, not one mass public shooting occurred where citizens were allowed to carry guns. In other words, the gun-free zones are the targets of choice. Gee, you didn't figure that out before? Gun-free zone means come on in, have fun, nobody can shoot back. And every time we talk about allowing people to conceal carry, the gun grabbers say, you want the Wild West, you want shootouts out in the street. No. The reason for having an armed citizenry is not to get in a shootout with the bad guys. The reason for having an armed citizenry is to give the bad guys a reason not to show up at all. And by the way, the West wasn't that wild. That was a propaganda myth promoted by Eastern industrialists who were afraid of losing all their workers once the West opened up. And you could go on out and homestead a place and have your own home, your own property, your own farm, your own cabin. That was very attractive to a lot of people. And the Eastern industrialists were seeing their workers, especially their smarter, skilled workers, leaving. And so they hired the media of the day to create this image of the Wild West being this horrible place of dangers. And I'm not saying it was perfectly safe. There were rattlesnakes and mountain lions, and there were criminals out there before law and order was established. But with everybody wearing guns, it wasn't a violent place. Do you know why the gunfight at the OK Corral became such an historical event? Because it was rare. You have a shootout like the OK Corral today in any major city, it's not going to get any news coverage at all because it's just part of that background noise. Like what you see up there in Chicago, the model for gun control for the nation. People wore guns on their hips to make them convenient. In fact, do you know where the origin of gun and holster came from? Was if you fell off your horse and you were being dragged by the stirrup, the gun was there at your hand so you could shoot your own horse before you were dragged to death. That's where that came from. It wasn't having the gun in the holster to do shootouts at high noon, opposite ends of Main Street, which, by the way, as far as historians can determine, that never actually happened. This fast draw at opposite ends of the street. It's as much a fantasy as some of the samurai movies you see coming out of Japan, of the amazing cuts that they do. It's part of our pop culture. It isn't real. So, now let's talk about computers. As I mentioned before, Apple is not releasing iPhone 7 pre-order numbers. Every time they come out with a new iPhone, the numbers are great, and they proclaim them and say, this is going to be a hit. Well, not for the iPhone 7. And already people are very upset over some decisions Apple has made. For one thing, they have gotten rid of the dedicated headphone jack. If you want sound out of your phone, other than the speaker, there are two ways to go about it. One is to use a wireless device, Bluetooth, which allows anybody in the area to intercept and listen to what you're hearing, or saying, for that matter. If you want to use headphones, they now go through that lightning port. That's become the one thing does all jack into the iPhone. And the only way that you can charge your phone and listen to it at the same time, you have to buy this accessory, the dock, which is about $50. And the wireless AirPods that replace the traditional headset and microphone, those are over $100 as well. Now, when you get your iPhone 7, you get an adapter that plugs into the lightning port and has a traditional headphone jack in it. If you lose it, and you will, because it's a little tiny thing, Apple will sell you a replacement for $9. Now, if you've seen the ads for the iPhone 7, they're making a big deal over the fact that this is the first waterproof iPhone. I challenge that because this iPhone 5 that I've got right here got soaked at one point, and I literally used canned air to blow the water out of it going through the headphone jack, and it came back to life. But they're claiming this is the new waterproof iPhone, but if you read it carefully, the warranty that comes with the iPhone 7 does not cover damage by water. They're sort of hedging their bets on that one. A lot of people are saying it's probably going to be better to wait for the iPhone 8. Well, I'm not buying another iPhone until this one actually dies, or I kill it, because I'm rough on my hardware. I don't need any more phone than what I've got right now. And there's always the possibility that new iPhones or new Androids are going to be loaded up with more ways for the government to spy on you and mess with your life, because that's what they love to do. They think it's their divine right. Now, as you know, there was a huge rush of companies getting into the smartwatch business. And it turns out Apple and Google really didn't think it was that good of an idea. But Google is obsessed with game theory, and they basically came up with the idea that if Google didn't come out with a smartwatch, Apple would and take all the spoils. And as it turns out, smartwatches are not really doing very well. The screens are too small. Certainly for the Android platform, they don't integrate well, because I actually bought one for my lady love, and it was more trouble to use than it was worth, and we wound up just throwing it in the drawer. And so now there is a huge buildup of unsold smartwatches. If you want to get one, I assume the price is going to come on down. But before you do that again, you need to learn from Intel, because Intel came out with their own smartwatch called the Basis. And it apparently had not been fully tested when it was shipped. And as it turned out, a lot of them would generate so much heat from their batteries and processors, they were literally burning the wrists of people wearing them. So Intel issued a recall and offered a 184-pound refund for their ARM slabs. Unfortunately, the payouts delivered by Western Union are, for some reason, bouncing at British banks. They're saying it's a computer problem with the bank. Have we let our technology become too decadent? Has it become so bloated and overly complex that we can't maintain it any longer? We need to address that question, because society's come up with amazing technology, and when they reach the point where they can't maintain it anymore, it comes apart pretty fast. Ancient Rome was the same way. Rome invented all kinds of stuff, concrete, aqueducts. When they weren't able to maintain it any longer, it all started coming apart, and everything dependent on those technologies collapsed. They're now basically saying that the recent disruption at Vienna's International Airport was a hack. They think it was politically motivated. The Interior Ministry is investigating, and the Austrian media is pointing the finger at Turkey. How can they possibly know who's behind the hack? I have the same concern with that I have with Hillary's people out there saying that Russia hacked the DNC emails. They can't find the ransomware writers. They can't find the malware writers. They can't find the people who are flooding our mailboxes with Viagra ads. And we're supposed to take their word for it that they know Russia, or in this case Turkey, was behind the hack. No, it just does not make any sense. Now, another story coming out of the Daily Mail, and this is going to make a lot of people nervous. People with lost or stolen contactless credit cards or debit cards are being warned that fraudsters can still use them for as much as 8 months after they are canceled. And as you know, there's been a recent trend in credit and bank companies where they will no longer absorb the losses from fraud and theft. You're on the hook. So, Clinton has blamed Hurricane Hermione on climate change. Another reason to vote against Hillary. She's fully on board with carbon taxes. Al Gore is out there saying that climate change deniers will be equated with racists and justice despised one day. So basically, after several record-setting winters and another one on the way, Al Gore and his carbon Nazis are reduced to defending their position by name-calling. Global warming deniers are racists. It's ridiculous. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and finishing up on human-caused global warming. It is snowing in Wellington, New Zealand, which is significant when you remember that down where they are, this is springtime. And apparently there's some road closures that they're having to deal with. I'm watching on Fox News, and apparently they're reporting that Syrian forces, aided by Russia and Iran, are making strong gains in Aleppo. And the U.S. is kind of at a loss how to stop this. Because if Syria and Russia and Iran kick out all those terrorists, the U.S. doesn't have any excuse to be there. Unless they want to go on back and say, all right, well, we need to get rid of the evil dictator who uses gas on his own people. And we've all heard that before. Now, do you remember at one point during the controversy over GMO foods, there was a study done over in France where instead of feeding a test population of rats GMO food for 3 months and then saying there's no problem, these scientists raised an entire generation of rats from birth to death, and they were in 3 groups. First group, all natural food. Second group, GMO corn. Third group, GMO corn sprayed with glyphosate. And they monitored the health. And the first thing discovered is that at month number 4, 1 month after Monsanto's scientists had stopped their tests to claim it was perfectly safe, the rats started developing huge tumors and other serious medical problems. And reproductive issues, shortened lifespan, serious problems. And the study was published, and then all of a sudden it was retracted. It was never refuted. It was simply made to go away. Well, there's an organization, the U.S. Right to Know, has obtained emails of correspondence between Monsanto and A. Wallace Hayes, the editor-in-chief of the formerly respected scientific journal Food and Chemical Toxicology, and basically detail how Monsanto was, in fact, directly involved in the suppression of this study. Now, if Monsanto could refute the study, if they had a way to prove that the scientists had done something wrong, they would have done that publicly. But when you move to suppress a report, that's as good as admitting that it's accurate and true. And Monsanto has become the poster child for corporations' abuse of the general population. They don't care if they make you sick. They just want your money. Surprisingly, CNN has come on out with an admission that the new... Oh, there's